Let's start this video with a confession. I wasn't exactly holding my breath for Life is Strange 2 to outshine its predecessor. But, to my astonishment, the game completely exceeded my expectations. Not only does it uphold the delicate balance of narrative and emotion established in the first game, but it takes that formula, cranks up the intensity, and delivers an experience that's as gripping as it is heart-wrenching. If you've ever found yourself getting lost in a game, you know what I'm talking about. Life is Strange 2 doesn't just tell you a story. It pulls you into the lives of two brothers, Sean and Daniel, whose bond becomes the beating heart of the game. Now, I'll be the first to admit, I'm a sucker for a well-told story. But what really caught me off guard here was the sheer variety of endings. They're not just different, they're distinct, shaped entirely by the choices you make throughout the game. So, in this video, I'll be diving into those endings, ranking them from best to worst, at least in my not-so-humble opinion. Now, let's get one thing straight. I'm fully aware this game has been out for a while, but frankly, I couldn't care less. I've recently played through the first and then this sequel, and the experience left such an impact on me that I just had to talk about it. So, if you're into this kind of content, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Just like its predecessor, Life is Strange 2 is a game that thrives on choice. And trust me, those choices are anything but simple. Depending on how you treat Daniel, whether you act like a responsible older brother or, well, not so much, you'll find yourself on very different paths, each leading to one of several wildly divergent endings. The story kicks off with an accident involving Sean and Daniel's father, where, thanks to a bizarre and utterly mysterious explosion, both their father and a police officer end up dead. This forces the brothers to go on the run, setting the stage for a journey that's as intense as it is emotionally charged. And as the game progresses, it becomes painfully clear that this explosion was no random act of God. It was Daniel's doing, courtesy of his newly discovered telekinetic powers. The choices you make regarding Daniel's actions and his use of these powers ultimately dictate which path you'll take. And trust me, each one comes with its own set of consequences. This is what I loved most about the game. It doesn't shy away from tackling heavy themes while still managing to deliver some seriously powerful emotional moments. Alright, enough preamble. Let's start with what I consider to be the best ending. And yes, this is all just my opinion, so feel free to disagree. As I mentioned earlier, to land one of the good endings, you'll need to be a beacon of morality throughout the game. No stealing, no causing a ruckus, and certainly no encouraging Daniel to embrace his inner supervillain. You know, the usual good guy stuff. If you manage to walk that straight and narrow, you'll find yourself at the game's climax, where Sean and Daniel are about to cross into Mexico, surrounded by a veritable army of police. If you decide to go ahead and cross, and you've been the perfect role model up to this point, Daniel will use his powers to help you escape. But just before crossing the border, he'll jump out of the car, choosing to stay behind. What follows is a bittersweet montage. Sean starting a new life in Puerto Lobos, seemingly happy, while Daniel stays with their grandparents, using his powers to help others and do some good in the world. It's an emotional ending. They all are. But the fact that this is considered the best ending says a lot about the game's perspective on happiness. Sean and Daniel are separated, yes, but they're both living their best lives, or at least as close to that as this game will allow. Sean keeps in touch with Daniel, and the important thing here is that Daniel seems content, fulfilled, and, most crucially, without regrets. All those good choices you made, they paid off, sort of. Let's move on to what I consider the second best ending, aptly named Redemption. The narrative tension builds as the brothers approach that fateful moment. Do they cross the border and escape their past? Or do they stop and face the consequences of their actions? If you choose to surrender, Sean ends up spending many years in prison, while Daniel is taken in by their grandparents. Fast forward to the future, and you'll witness Sean finally getting out of prison, reuniting with his brother, and taking him back to one of the campsites where they once slept during their journey. It's a reunion that's equal parts touching and heartbreaking. Sean can't hold back his tears, as Daniel recounts everything he's been through, and that's precisely why I can't put this ending at the top. After everything Sean endured, losing his father, fleeing from the law, and spending the prime of his life in prison, it just doesn't feel like a win. Sure, it's the morally right choice, but it's a far cry from a happy ending. At least in the first ending, Sean finds some semblance of peace in Mexico. Here, the brothers are reunited, but the scars of their past are too deep to ignore. So while this ending might be the most ethically sound, it's also the most tragic in its own way. To get these last two endings, you would have had to take a pretty dark path through the story, encouraging Daniel to use his powers recklessly, stealing, maybe even killing along the way. If you choose to cross the border with Daniel, he'll agree to help you, and what follows is a display of power that's as terrifying as it is awe-inspiring. Daniel unleashes his full potential, obliterating everything in his path, and the brothers make it to Mexico together. But this is no fairy tale ending. Sure, Sean and Daniel are together, working as mechanics in Puerto Lobos, just like their father did, but they're far from the people they once were. Daniel's powers are now a tool for intimidation and violence, and while they've managed to escape the law, they've also lost themselves in the process. This ending is bittersweet. On one hand, the brothers are together, but on the other, they've become the very thing their father never wanted them to be. So, why do I rank this ending lower? Simple. Daniel's not happy. It's clear that while the brothers are together, this isn't the life they wanted or deserved. They're fugitives, using Daniel's powers for their own gain. And while that might sound cool in a twisted sort of way, it's not a totally good ending. And finally, we arrive at the worst ending, the one that's a complete and utter train wreck, appropriately named Lone Wolf. To reach this ending, you would have had to give Daniel free rein with his powers, guiding him down a path that's as dark as it is dangerous. But instead of crossing the border, if you choose to surrender, Daniel won't listen. He'll go ahead anyway, using his powers to carve a path through the chaos. But the cost is devastating. Sean ends up dead. Daniel crosses into Mexico alone, and from that point on, things only get worse. He becomes a criminal, using his powers to survive in a world that's cold and unforgiving. The final scene shows Daniel on a beach, light years away from the innocent child we once knew. He's a killer now. And while he might look pretty badass with his new look, there's no denying that this ending is the embodiment of tragedy. Sean is gone, Daniel is lost, and the hope of redemption is nothing but a distant memory. So, yeah, if you're looking for the worst possible outcome, this is it. It's bad not just because of what happens, but because of what it represents. The complete loss of innocence, the destruction of everything these brothers once stood for. So there you have it, 4 endings, each more emotionally charged than the last. And in the end, it all comes down to the choices you make throughout the game. If you're good, you'll find yourself on a path to one of the better endings. But if you stray too far into the dark, well, the game won't pull any punches. That's what I love about Life is Strange 2. Your choices matter, and they lead to endings that are as complex and nuanced as the story itself. What about you? What's your favorite ending in the game? Do you agree with my rankings, or do you have a different take? Personally, I think all the endings have their merits, even if none of them are truly happy. The game doesn't let you off easy, and that's what makes it so compelling. No matter what you do, the brothers will either end up separated or lost along the way, along with their moral compass. And honestly, that's life. I hope you enjoyed this video explaining the endings of Life is Strange 2. If you did, and you want more content like this, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. It really does help. And drop your thoughts in the comments. Let's keep the conversation going. If you stuck around until the end, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.